Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. MyPillow.com, promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in as we kick off another week. Glad to have you. Lots to cover today. President Donald Trump sat down with NBC's Kristen Welker yesterday, and he used the occasion to ask some of his own questions. When Ms Welker tried to press the president on when he would cancel the emergency order at the southern border, Trump asked the Meet the Press host whether it sounded good to call the border the most secure it's ever been. Welker wouldn't answer. We have details on this appearance. In other White House news, President Trump has ordered the feds to reopen Alcatraz to house what he called America's most ruthless and violent criminals. Another tell-all book on Joe Biden is hitting the shelves soon. This one claims that Biden's staffers opted against having him take a cognitive test in early 2024, fearing that doing so could fuel rather than quell public doubts about his age and mental sharpness. And the South Carolina legislature goes back to Columbia tomorrow for the final 3 days of the session. South Carolina Representative Bill Taylor joins us to talk about the priorities and what can realistically be accomplished in the final week of this year's session.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, you know, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
President Trump sat down with NBC's Kristen Welker yesterday, and he used the moment to ask his own questions. I'm not quite sure Kristen Welker quite knew how to handle this, how to respond, when she thought she was the one answering or asking the questions, rather. Trump pressed her during the Meet the Press interview on whether it sounded good to call the border the most secure it's ever been. President Trump praised the current state of border security as the best in U.S. history, following what he called years of negligence under the Biden administration. When Welker asked if he considered the border secure, Trump responded without hesitation, "It's really secure," he said. He followed with a rhetorical flourish aimed at reinforcing the message. He said, "When you say that, doesn't it sound good?" Welker didn't quite know how to respond. She paused briefly and then pivoted to another subject. Here's the exchange.
Border crossings are at their lowest level ever recorded. Is the border
Is that good?
Is the border now secure?
Yeah, it's really secure.
It's absolutely
Isn't that good?
secure.
When you say that, doesn't that just sound good? After being abused for years by an incompetent president that allowed people to pour through an open border, criminals from all over the world, murderers and insane people from mental institutions and insane asylums. Isn't it a beautiful thing when you say it's the most secure it's ever been in the history of our country? Isn't that a nice statement?
Well, I'm curious to know what it means. You declared a national emergency on the southern border. The order is still in place.
By the way,
even though you're saying
exactly
the border's
what you
secure.
said. You know, it means we have the most secure border we've ever had.
Well, and I guess the question becomes, when will you know that the emergency is over? Are you planning to lift it at some point? Is it necessary? Because obviously the military is involved. Will you lift that emergency?
Well, the biggest emergency is the courts aren't allowing us to take really.
We're going to talk about that, but talk to me first about this.
That's to me the emergency.
Talk to me first about this.
The border
emergency.
now is not the emergency. The border is it's all part of the same thing, though. The big emergency right now is that we have thousands of people that we want to take out, and we have some judges that want everybody to go to
Some
court.
of them you...
And she kind of shifted it from there away from that topic. She, again, trying to press the president on when he would cancel the national emergency declaration at the border. Trump said the border itself is no longer the core of the emergency, as you heard him say. That the border is not the emergency, that the emergency now is getting these people deported. The president also dismissed the ongoing speculation that he might seek a third term in office, something that, of course, most people agree is prohibited under the 22nd Amendment. When asked, he said, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do that. I don't know if that's constitutional, he said, but this is not something I'm looking to do. The conversation with Welker comes, of course, after a week of celebrating President Trump's 100 days back in office. Last week, officials highlighted his administration's aggressive crackdown on illegal immigration. Border Czar Tom Homan and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt spoke at a briefing last week, and they cited the massive reductions in border crossings and ramped up deportation efforts as judges all around the country are trying to keep this from happening. The administration says it's deported 100,000 illegal immigrants in its first months, although it did not release updated figures this past week. Trump has leaned heavily on immigration enforcement as a signature issue in his second term, as he understands that's to a large degree how he won re-election to the Oval Office. Illegal immigration was the top issue in last year's presidential race, as you're very aware. According to officials, apprehensions at the border dropped sharply in March and again in April, following a series of high-profile removals and the reinstatement of policies allowing expedited deportation for those without asylum claims. Although, again, they keep hitting roadblocks with these federal judges. Eventually, it'll work its way out. Eventually, I think the U.S. Supreme Court is going to step in, and they're going to clarify these district judges' roles. The interview and last week's announcements are part of a renewed effort by the administration to talk about immigration policies and to really continue to show that the Trump administration is going to be tough at our southern border. In other news from the White House over the weekend, President Trump is calling for the notorious prison, which is now a historical landmark, Alcatraz, in the San Francisco Bay, to be rebuilt larger and reopened to house the country's most ruthless and violent criminals. Now, this came in a Truth Social post last night. The president wrote this in all capital letters: rebuild and open Alcatraz. He said, for too long, America has been plagued by vicious, violent, and repeat criminal offenders, the dregs of society who will never contribute anything other than misery and suffering. He went on to write, when we were a more serious nation in times past, we did not hesitate to lock up the most dangerous criminals and keep them far away from anyone they could harm. He continued, no longer will we tolerate these serial offenders who spread filth, bloodshed, and mayhem on our streets. Trump said he's directing the Bureau of Prisons, Department of Justice, FBI, and Department of Homeland Security to reopen a substantially enlarged and rebuilt Alcatraz to house America's most ruthless and violent offenders. He followed up with another post saying, we'll no longer be held hostage to criminals, thugs, and judges that are afraid to do their job and allow us to remove criminals who came into our country illegally. The reopening of Alcatraz will serve as a symbol of law, order, and justice. We will make America great again. Alcatraz opened back in the 1930s. The prison, of course, located on an island, 22 acres. It was closed after only 29 years of operations. Considering it's not quite a mile and a half distance to the shore, the Bay Area island was considered practically escape-proof, although there are 14 documented attempted escapes. No evidence that anyone was ever successful, though. The most notorious one was June 11th, 1962, which led to the movie Escape from Alcatraz. In its heyday, the prison housed some of the most famous gangsters like James Whitey Bulger, Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, the infamous Birdman of Alcatraz, and public enemy number one, Alvin Karpis. It, again, closed in 1963. Alcatraz Island today is a popular San Francisco tourist attraction. It's operated by the National Park Service. And if you've ever been to the San Francisco Bay Area, you may have made your way out to the island and done the tour. It would make a good prison, wouldn't it? Because, again, you wouldn't have to worry about people escaping. That was the whole purpose of putting it on the island. Are you ready for this? I dropped over 30 pounds on the PhD weight loss plan, and I never took Ozempic or any of those other weight loss shots. Joey Hudson here. Before you take a drug, here's something you should know. Your body already makes GLP-1. That's the appetite-fighting hormone that these popular drugs copy. But the PhD weight loss program helps your body make it on its own. No side effects, no long-term risk, no major muscle loss, and no rebound weight gain when you stop. Just natural, lasting results. Before Big Pharma was dancing around in commercials, Dr. Ashley Lucas was doing the real work, helping people lose weight naturally and keeping it off, all without hunger or cravings. At PhD Weight Loss, you'll learn what to eat, when to eat, and how to flip your fat-burning switch without a shot. Don't trade your health for a quick fix. You can do this without Big Pharma. You can do this without drugs. Right now, the first 11 callers get 2 weeks free added to their program, 15% off when you fully commit to the program, a free supplemental bundle, and the PhD Get Results Guarantee. Call now, 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900 or online at myphdweightloss.com. Just as I predicted last year, we're being bombarded with tell-all books about the final days of the Biden administration and just how bad Joe Biden really was. 2 books have already been published. I'm in the process of reading one and have already received the other. There's a third on the way, though. The latest book on the 2024 election reveals that President Joe Biden's team opted against having him take a cognitive test in early 2024 because they feared that doing so would make things worse rather than better, that it would fuel rather than quell public doubts about his age and his mental sharpness, because those who were with him on a day-to-day basis knew just really how bad Joe Biden was. They didn't want us to know. They didn't want the world to confirm what so many Republicans and what President Trump was saying out on the campaign trail. Now, the aides claimed that they felt like he would pass the test. They just didn't want to take the chance. According to the New York Times, the book is titled 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America. It's co-authored by Tyler Pager, Josh Dawsey, and Isaac Arnsdorf. And it offers a behind-the-scenes look at a campaign that increasingly found itself navigating concerns about Biden's age and his fitness. And he fueled this speculation with his many, many gaffes, with times when he'd be on stage that he appeared to not know where he was. He appeared not to know which way to go. He'd be shaking hands with some fictional person. He would not be able to read his teleprompter. The internal discussions, according to the book, reportedly occurred just before Biden's physical exam back in February 2024. And of course, shortly after the release of Special Counsel Robert Hur's report on the classified documents investigation. That report, you may recall, described Biden, who was 81 at the time, as this is a direct quote from Hur's report, a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. It's a characterization that quickly became a flashpoint in public and political conversations. Now, the White House did not publicly address whether Biden would undergo a cognitive test. This new report shows that his aides were deeply concerned that even entertaining such a step would look like an admission of weakness. So, in other words, just thinking about the idea of taking a cognitive test, in their mind, you're going to be admitting that an 81-year-old needed a test. Well, he did. It should be required after a person turns, maybe 70? The book also sheds lights on the tension between top Democrat strategists over Biden's viability as a candidate, whether or not he could run a competitive campaign. Again, these are people who knew what he was really like on a day-to-day basis. They saw him at work. They saw how he could not get started very early in the morning, and he had to retire pretty early in the afternoon. One passage in the book, according to the New York Times, recounts a heated phone call. This was in 2022 between then White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain and former Obama advisor David Axelrod. The call was sparked by Axelrod's being quoted in the New York Times as saying or cautioning that Biden would be closer to 90 than 80 by the end of a second term, a line that Klain saw as undermining the president's reelection momentum. According to the book, Klain reportedly said, "There's no Obama out there, Ax." This was during a phone call. He called Axelrod. Who's going to do it if he doesn't do it? Another recently released book, Uncharted, which was written by author Chris Whipple. I have this book. I haven't started reading it yet. It paints an even starker picture of Biden's condition in the lead up to the disastrous June 2024 debate. Whipple writes that Klain, who returned to help prep Biden at Camp David, was shocked by the president's lack of engagement and awareness. Now, what you need to understand is Ron Klain had already left his position as chief of staff of the White House. So he had not been around Joe Biden on a day-to-day basis for quite some time. The author writes, again, under the idea that Ron Klain comes back, hasn't seen the president or hasn't worked with him on a day-to-day basis in a while. He says he's never seen him so exhausted and out of it. He tells the story of during their debate prep that Biden at one point just left the prep session and went and sat by the pool at Camp David. Now, these accounts, of course, are a growing narrative. This is the third book. There'll probably be more to come. It increasingly documents what journalists and former aides who work with Biden, and it highlights the age-related concerns within the Democrat Party, and that they were actually more urgent and widespread than previously reported or admitted to at the time. They talk about while Biden's public-facing team downplayed these worries during the campaign, privately they were grappling with mounting doubts and discontent within the organization because they all knew Joe Biden wasn't capable, but yet they didn't want to give up their power. They couldn't stand the idea of Donald Trump being back in the White House, and they couldn't stand the idea of the Democrats handing it over to the Republicans. None of these White House aides and none of the Biden representatives have responded to these latest revelations in any of these books yet. But we knew it was coming because we knew that things were hard then. We knew that Joe Biden wasn't capable of running that campaign. They were just propping him up. I mean, that's what they literally was doing, propping Joe Biden up. How scary is that? That a bunch of political operatives would rather have their guy in office knowing that he wasn't capable of serving. But they would rather do that. They would rather put our country's safety at risk than give up the power. That is a scary, scary thought. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Another close call near Reagan International Airport. An Army Black Hawk helicopter, we're told, caused 2 near misses with commercial airliners just this past week, including one passing as little as 200 feet from the jet. Very similar to what we saw just recently when 67 people were killed. Officials and politicians were quick to blast the Army for the incident. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy calling it, quote, unacceptable. So here's what happened. On Thursday of last week, the commercial airlines, Delta Flight 1671 and Republic Flight 5825, were rerouted just moments before they were due to land at Reagan due to the proximity of the helicopter. This is all according to the Federal Aviation Administration in a statement they released over the weekend. Both flights were on their final approach, less than 2 miles from the runway. It was in the mid-afternoon, around 2:30 p.m. The Black Hawk, according to a report from Politico, and this was coming from the FAA's Assistant Administrator for Government and Industry Affairs, Kristen, he wrote in an email response to Politico, quote, the Black Hawk took a scenic route around the Pentagon versus proceeding directly from the west to the heliport. So these pilots, we don't know if they're men, women, or combination thereof, decided they were going to take a little tour of the Pentagon. Do they not realize what happened just a few weeks ago? According to the report, at one point, the helicopter got between 200 feet of the Republic flight and between 400 feet of the Delta flight. Senator Maria Cantwell, a Democrat from Washington State, told Politico is outrageous that only 3 months after an Army Black Hawk helicopter tragically collided with a passenger jet, the same Army brigade again flew a helicopter too close to passenger jets on final approach, she said. She called on the Pentagon and the FAA to give our airspace the security and safety attention it deserves. During Thursday's close call, FAA controllers told the 2 commercial flights to do go-arounds as they approached Reagan, saying that they told them to break off their landings and circle back and try again. The trouble came in part because controllers temporarily couldn't pinpoint the Black Hawk's tracking position in real time on their radar screens. At the time, the control tower had 1 supervisor, 4 certified professional controllers, and 1 certified professional trainee receiving on-the-job training. As you will recall, one of the criticisms from before was they weren't quite sure that they had proper staffing in the tower on the night that the 67 people lost their lives. They got to get this right. And look, I don't know who these pilots were, but they need to be reprimanded. You can't just break off now and do a sightseeing tour just because you want to see the Pentagon from the air. Today starts a new era in student loans. Student loan borrowers who find themselves in default will face government-backed involuntary collection, signaling a brand new landscape. It's a new day after the Biden administration has paused paybacks year after year. According to the release, garnished tax returns, Social Security payments, and even wages will all be fair game starting today after this 5-year pause. The Trump administration has made it very clear that there's no additional forgiveness that's going to be offered to borrowers. If you borrowed money, if you owe a student loan, you need to pay it back. It's just that simple. Now, Asa Benez, a policy director for Student Borrower Protection Center, said for those who have been unable to keep up with their loans, the resumption of involuntary elections is going to be catastrophic. She said, we're literally seeing the folks who can least afford it being penalized with this change. Being penalized? They're being penalized because they had an administration who thought that it was the right thing, that the American taxpayer would pay off their loans. And just because they've had a break, maybe they should have been saving their money during this 4-year break so that when payments resume, they'd be ready to make them. I have no sympathy for people who say they're going to be in hardship because suddenly they have to start repaying a loan that they borrowed and they've had a break for about 4 years now. I wish I were given a break on some of my loans, payments that I need to make. Give me a break. So here's what they're looking at. Or if you owe some student loans and you've been on a vacation, a paid vacation, here's what you're looking at. Borrowers who are struggling with their student loans are put into delinquency after 90 days of missed payments. After 270 days, borrowers are put into default, which presents more serious financial consequences like involuntary collections from their paycheck or difficulty securing future loans. Those penalties have been on break since March of 2020. Senior Education Department officials said borrowers will be given a required 30-day notice before wages are garnished. The federal government can garnish up to 15% of a person's paycheck. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said American taxpayers will no longer be forced to serve as collateral for irresponsible student loan policies. The Biden administration misled borrowers. The executive branch does not have the constitutional authority to wipe debt away, nor do the loan balances simply disappear. Hundreds of billions of dollars have already been transferred to taxpayers. That's going to stop. Advocates are encouraging borrowers to get in contact with their loan servicers if they're struggling, sign up for an income-driven repayment plan, and consider loan consolidation options. Rochelle Gorey, founder and CEO of Springford, a financial health firm, said that consumers are searching for assistance and help and are not quite sure what to do. They can't solve this problem on their own. Well, yeah, you can just start paying. Maybe you have to give up something. Maybe you don't get to go on as long of a vacation this year. Or maybe you have to stop buying expensive coffees in the morning or something. Again, I have no sympathy for people who borrowed money to go to college. They got their education, and because Joe Biden told them, well, it's really not fair for you to repay this, we're going to try to forgive it for you. Well, there's a new sheriff in town. His name's Donald Trump, and he believes that you should be responsible. The report says the restart of payments and penalties is giving whiplash to borrowers who spent the previous 4 years under an administration that was trying to lower their debt, not crack down on it. I don't know what the big surprise is. And to read some of these stories of people who are just so devastated that they have to start paying their loans back. Did they not think about the idea that maybe, just maybe, they're going to have to start paying them back sooner than later? Reportedly, House Republicans are looking to change student repayment options that are currently available, and they're looking to maybe revamp the whole system. We'll see. But again, today, you need to go ahead. If you have a student loan and you haven't been making your payments, you need to start making plans to do so. With just 3 days left in this year's legislative session, South Carolina lawmakers will return to the state capitol with a long list of items to do, but a very short period of time to get them done. Representing the people of South Carolina House District 86, which includes portions of Aiken and Lexington counties, Representative Bill Taylor. Welcome. How are you, sir?
Well, Joey, I'm fantastic. Good to be with you today. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Well, thanks for your time today. Let's start with what you consider to be the priorities as you guys will go back in session tomorrow and have just 3 days.
Well, first of all, I've been called a lot of names in my life because I'm in politics, right? You know, but honestly, fool is never one. So only a fool would look you in the eye and say, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen the next 3 days. I often tell folks that particularly the last 2 weeks of a legislative session are more like playing in a paintball game when the things are going like back and forth and back and forth. And, you know, honestly, you have to just keep your wits about you to know what's going to happen. So at this point, I don't think anybody for certain would tell you how we're going to end next Thursday at 5 o'clock at Sine Die. There's things hanging in the balance. We've done some good stuff. We got more good stuff, hopefully, to do and to accomplish, but it's always the crunch at the very end. So a couple of things. I think this week in particular, we were so thrilled to have school choice finally get across the finish line for the umpteenth time, I might add, because as you know, we've passed it in previous sessions and the Supreme Court, blocked it. So they did give us a good code in their opinion, particularly the minority code from Justice Kittredge. And so we were able to model legislation, we think, that will pass muster. Of course, the moment the governor signs it, which he will probably next week, or this week, I should say, but there'll be lawsuits, of course, and so we'll go do it again. But I think that's just an enormous. I'm a school choice guy from the very beginning. I've been in the House for 15 years, and I stand for public schools, and I stand for school choice. They are not diametrically opposed to each other. Every child learns differently, and some kids need to have a different path to get there, and maybe a different zip code. So this allows them to break out of their zip codes. So you've got school choice that passed. What's hanging in the balance, I think, is really important. You've got really the liquor liability issue. And this whole tort reform and liquor liability issue. Look, it was 2 years ago in April that I got my first call on this, and it was from one of the major VFW halls right here in Aiken. And they said, we've had our insurance canceled and we can't get new insurance. We can't find a provider. And I was like, what the heck is going on? It was the first news of this 2 years ago. And it was just starting. So, I sorted into it. I actually did call Speaker Smith, Merle Smith, Speaker of the House. And he said, I said, Merle. And I explained what the issue was. And I said, a government runs on crises. I'm sorry to say, you need a good crisis to get something done, right? Like energy or school choice or whatever. So I said, Speaker, I said, it's going to be a damn crisis when your VFW hall closes. And he said, you got that. Yep. So we've all been working on this one. And the House, last year passed a liquor liability that didn't get through the Senate. We did it again this year. They've been working on the big tort reform, which is an enormous issue. It's much larger than just liquor liability. So, and they just sent it over to us. They worked months and months on it, and we just got it a few weeks ago. So we just don't have time to get that Senate bill done. They've already started hearings. I was sat on a 2.5-hour hearing just last week. It is I'm not a lawyer, I'm a lawmaker, so it's a difference, but it's a very complex problem. So what we are doing, we're working very hard, negotiations between the House and Senate. Let's get that liquor liability done. And we promise we'll work on the tort reform off session. So when we come back in January, we'll have something that we can work on together with the Senate. So that's huge. It's huge upstate. You got a lot of folks up there who are the restaurants, the hospitality industry, it's a serious issue. We got to get her done.
It is, because there have been a lot of businesses who have just literally closed their doors, gone out of business because of it. More who will likely do the same thing if there's not some relief pretty quickly. So Representative Taylor, do you think there is a chance in these final few days of the session that something may be passed to help these businesses?
Yeah, we're right on the brink of getting that done. Can I promise it'll be done? Oh, no, never make a promise you can't keep. So it's not up to me. But I can tell you there's hard negotiations going on. And we all know this has to be done. Yeah. Will it be done? Can we find that thing? I mean, we've passed a really good bill that really helps because it tiers the bars, the restaurants. Because if you're not serving liquor after 9 o'clock, you're probably not one of them bars that's got the DUIs heading right out on the street.
Right.
So,
sure.
And all kinds of things are in that bill. That's a good thing.
Sure. All right, let's talk about taxes, income taxes to be specific. That's been another topic that's been hot on people's minds this session. Of course, a few weeks ago, we thought we had a great bill. It was rolled out with a lot of fanfare, only to find out, it doesn't work exactly the way we thought it would. Right. There's an alternative version, as I understand it. Where do we stand on that?
Well, the alternative version, and let me just go back to, I am on Ways and Means. I'm on the Budget Committee. Even better, I'm on the Small Tax Subcommittee. So I'm one of only 3 legislators that have ever voted in favor of the bill because we passed it out of the subcommittee to the full Ways and Means. Then we began working on it, and we had to do a lot of modeling to get it right, and we had to change it. So it didn't stick at the 3.9. But, the first thing and most important thing is we've got to decouple from the federal government because our taxes were hooked to the federal government. We've got to get off of that. Those guys aren't trustworthy. We don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to pass? Are they really going to pass and renew the Trump tax reform? Or is it going to go way up again? So we've got to decouple that, and that's a huge issue. So we found another spot that's really, really good, where you have just about 75% of the people in the first year are going to either have no tax increase or have a decrease, and mostly a decrease. So that's a good thing. That's a good start. So you've got about 25% that are going to pay a little more. But if you're kind of going to the flat tax, it's the taxing principle. Taxes are better if the lower you can get the rate, the more you can spread it out. That way, everybody's paying something. Now, a lot of those, quote, people who haven't been paying anything will, maybe $50, maybe $100. I don't think that's a backbreaker for a lot of people, but we've kept all kinds of zero taxes in until $30,000, even up to $40,000. So it's modeled really good this time. Now, here's the problem: we've run out of time.
Yeah.
So it's on the House floor. Hopefully, we'll get a big vote on that, this week, and then we'll send it to the Senate. But then they'll have the off session to work on it, and hopefully, when they come back in January, we can get it done and across the finish line. It's a big deal, and it's important. We've got to get it done.
Sure. Overall, and with me today, Representative Bill Taylor from House District 86. Overall, how do you feel about this session? I've had some of your colleagues in both the House and the Senate say that they were a little disappointed with what you had been able to accomplish. How do you feel?
Well, there's always those. You always wish more were done. Yeah. But you've got 170 people, as we used to say, they're all senior class presidents elected on their own, right? Yeah. the kings of their little areas. And so getting those people to all agree and to see an agenda, I think the House Republican caucus in particular, I will tell you, it leads the agenda. Yeah. I'm not sure my senators would like to hear that, but we lead the agenda, and we're a supermajority, and we can get things done. So I think I'm never satisfied, but I also pragmatic. After 15 years, I understand some things can't get done as easily, and they have to roll over to the next year. So you can't judge us on 1 year; you got to judge us on 2 years. By the way, I'm pretty pleased because I've been working for 8 years on the hands-free cell phone bill, which is to put the damn telephone down, right? Put your eyes on the road and drive. And so after having my teeth kicked in for, I can't tell you how many times over 8 years and been disappointed, we're across the finish line now. It comes back, the Senate's passed it unanimously this past week, comes back to the House. Hopefully we can get concurrence, and wouldn't it be great if we can send it to the governor and get her signed? So well,
and I was going to congratulate you on that because I knew you had been working on that, and I saw that it had passed, and so that's great news, and it'll just make South Carolinians safer on the roads.
Yeah, it's just one thing. I mean, there's other distractions in the car and the vehicle. We all know that from the screens and the GSP, all the maps and all that stuff. So, but you know what? This one right here, holding that up, all you do is put it down. You still can talk on the phone. You still can text if you're brave enough to dictate it and have it come out. But so there's all kinds of things you can still do. But we've proven in every other state that's done it. We'll be the 33rd state to have this sort of serious hands-free bill. They've saved a lot of lives. We potentially 1,000 people a year die on our roads, and guess what? We probably can save anywhere from 170 to 200 lives a year, given what other states have done.
Wow, that is so good. Representative Bill Taylor, thank you again for your time. I know you're going to have a busy week this week. Good luck to you in Columbia.
In the paintball gun machine, right?
That's right. Thank you for your time.
We will sit on the House floor on Thursday until 5 o'clock doing our work. But at 5 o'clock, when that clock hits, we sine die, and hopefully we'll have a lot of things happen across this week.
Yeah.
So
well,
stay tuned.
Sure thing. It's been a pleasure having you.
Joey, appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.